Joining me now is Farida Nabourema. She's a human rights activist joining us live from Dakar in Senegal to talk to us further about the Guinea coup d'etat and human rights abuses in the country. Good afternoon, Farida. Thank you very much for joining us on NewsHour.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, there have been many violations of human rights in Guinea over the past year, ever since Alpha Conde won the presidential elections. We've seen security forces open fire and indiscriminatory killings taking place across the country. Now, are these the reasons behind the coup attempt to restore peace and prosperity?
At this stage, I believe it is too early to clearly make an assessment of what is the reason behind the coup, as the putschists themselves have very close ties with the ousted president. However, it is important to remind the audience that the human rights abuses in Guinea started way before the presidential elections of 2020. Since 2018, more precisely, the people of Guinea have taken the street massively to protest against an attempt to modify the constitution. Guinea had its first election since independence in 2010, which saw Alpha Conde become president, and he himself, who has been an activist, a democracy activist and leader for many decades, was seen as a hope for a democratic future in Guinea. Unfortunately, at the end of his second term, he decided to elongate his tenure in power by modifying the constitution. For this, he delayed legislative elections in order to keep in the parliament people who have close ties with him and proceed with his constitutional coup. And that constitutional coup was protested for many years by Guinean activists, and which resulted in the killing of dozens of civilians and the arrest of hundreds of activists who continue to be detained till today. So we can say that before the elections, the people have already demanding change, and they have already been contesting the attempts to change their constitution just to allow President Conde to stay for a third term.
Okay. Now, Guinea's security forces continue to enjoy immunity as they mercilessly slaughter people in the country, and the government has frequently invoked the state of emergency to prohibit demonstrations. So why is the state taking such a hard approach against its civilians?
Guinea has had a very long story of authoritarianism, and to be clear, Guinea hasn't really enjoyed full democracy since its independence. In 2009, following the death of their previous president, Lansana Conte, who held on to power for several decades, we have seen the military do a coup which led to extreme human rights abuses and atrocities against civilians. On September 28, 2010, more precisely, during an opposition rally at a big stadium in Conakry, the military presidential guard attacked civilians, raping dozens of women and killing multiple civilians. And this massacre till today has never been solved, and people haven't responded to those crimes. So it is not something new in Guinea. The military forces have always been extremely abusive of their power, which is why the current coup, even though we can say brings some joy to some people in Guinea, because we can see citizens through some videos on the internet, we can see citizens chanting and glorifying the army for carrying a coup against a tyrant. However, it still calls for a lot of concern, and we have to be careful in terms of endorsing a military regime that has no history of respecting human rights.
Okay, so you just explained to us that that incident that took place in well, I've got 2009 here, but you said 2010, when Guinean security forces massacred over 150 peaceful opposition supporters and raped dozens of women at the stadium. Now, those responsible haven't been tried. Will this coup highlight the long-standing issue and force the International Criminal Court to take some sort of credible action here?
I'm not sure if the people of Guinea themselves have faith in the international community and precisely the international courts. But to be honest, it is quite appalling that in the 21st century, such horrendous crimes can continue to go unpunished, and there are no consequences for people to take such abusive acts against women and civilians and innocent citizens. In the context of Guinea, more precisely, we are still seeing the army coming to power in force, and this only brings back memories of the military coup that was carried in 2009 and 8, sorry, which saw the military rule from 2008 and 2010. But unfortunately, the very poor record of President Alpha Conde, who was a civilian, who was a human rights activist, a university law professor, who was seen and highly respected as a true democratic person, his poor record of respecting human rights unfortunately sets a precedent for the army to not do better. So it is important for the international community to, instead of just completely backlisting the military right now, make sure it accompanies the military in the process to continue leading peacefully, but more importantly, to plan on yielding power to civilians and organize democratic, truly democratic and transparent elections in the short run, which will see a full return to civilian rule.
Okay, Farida, thank you very much for talking to us and giving us a picture of the very stark truth in the country. But